Hello friends and welcome back to another episode of Minimal Mixed Media. As you guys could probably tell throughout this series, we're sort of amping it up as we go, but today I'm back with another version of the packaging technique because a lot of you loved the last one, but there's different ways to do it, so hopefully you can do this if you have these products in your stash. Today I'm taking a plastic sheet and some inks, in this case Distress Oxide inks in the colors Antique Linen and Lucky Clover, and using those as my color instead of an actual liquid. So you'll see here I just stamped the ink onto the plastic, then use some water. Now make sure you're using the right type of ink for this. I am no ink expert myself, but you do need a water-based ink that will work well with water and make sure that it can actually move as if it were a watercolor. So luckily the Tim Holtz inks are really great at that, and so are many other dye inks. So just search your stash for one that might work, and here I'm going to layer them together. And what's nice about the Distress Oxides is they do hold their own color, whereas other types of inks may bleed and blend together. So if you're nervous about it, test it out on another sheet of paper. But here I'm actually using pattern paper as my background, which I thought was super fun and different than just using white cardstock, which is not my jam. But if it is yours, it's a great way to get a nice clean base for some fun, colorful mixed media. So once I let that dry, I really like how it looks, and I'm going to amp it up again. And with mixed media, there comes a lot of easier, lots of harder ones, lots of different techniques nonetheless. And I have these random photos from a trip up to Alexandria Bay area in the Thousand Islands, and they're just the random photos that I have left. So two of us sort of walking on this trail. And then another one of a house that sits on two pieces, well, two islands really, and one side's Canada and one side's the US, which I think is super cool. So there's a little picture of their bridge. But when I step it up with mixed media, I like to do different techniques on the same page. But if you guys don't want to do that, there's definitely ways you can just do one. Pulling each technique out to do on a separate page for yourself might be a better look, if that's your style, if that's your preference, whatever it might be. But I really wanted to use this stencil from Echo Park that says Adventure with some cross arrows on it. And I end up just using a nice brown distress ink to blend this out. Now it does not take a lot of energy to do ink stenciling, but you will notice I did washi tape the sides down, because if you don't, and if it's not an adhesive stencil, it can move. And then with words especially, I wanted to make sure that it was a clean look so that they were legible, but I also like the rough and grungy look that you get when you're doing ink blending yourself, and sort of get that unfulfilled, sort of like faded look in some spots, which works perfect for this type of travel/adventure page. And what I really like about this particular stencil is it's not just words, it adds a little bit more flair to it with the arrows and the accents, which I really like. And I do apologize that it does shake my camera a little bit. It's actually the table shaking, not the camera itself, so it does look a little bit funny. But knowing that I have 3 photos, I want to make sure that I have stenciling sort of peeking out in several spots. And that's one thing about mixed media, and I know people who have trouble, not like having a whole plan to go on, can really struggle with, is you end up covering up a ton of your actual work, which I get, but it's something that if you add extra and knowing that it's going to be covered up for the most part, like here I'm putting 3 photos on this, a lot of it's going to get covered up. It'll make up for, the stuff that's covered up if you, 1, can plan ahead, or 2, just add a ton extra stuff and you'll see how it turns out. And I think it's kind of fun in a way that it is a little bit of a roulette. But for those of us who are very much so planners and like that kind of structure, always test it out on a scrap piece of paper if you can first. Test your colors, test your technique, just so you don't ruin something that you really love. But don't be afraid to go out your comfort zone and try something. Now you may notice I've pulled out a ton of chipboard pieces from my Crate Paper chipboard set that's part of my How to Kill a Kit with Style. And I used a ton from the September kit here. This was actually made pretty early on. I just never uploaded it because I wanted my mixed media stuff to sort of ramp up as we went. But make sure to leave a comment down below with what you want to see next in the next 2 months for the Minimal Mixed Media series. Obviously there's going to be a lot of stuff and there's also going to be little stuff, so I like doing different types of techniques because there's so many different types of folks out there who like different things. But since this was created super early on when I started working with my kit, a lot of this stuff is actually kind of hasn't been seen in a while, but I promise I did use it and it's on this layout. But I have these 3 photos, and I pulled out those chipboard pieces to start building out where my clusters are going to go. And what's really nice about, you know, the 6x6 paper pad, which is Lucky Charm from Dear Lizzie, and the 12x12 paper pad, which is the watering can paper pad from DCWV, is somehow the fact that they're both cream-based pattern papers, they just go so well together. And if you guys are putting together kits, or if you're putting together a page and you realize you're working with a cream-based pattern, try to find other cream-based patterns. They just flow a lot more smoothly, in my opinion, when you do cream on cream. But again, that's a personal preference, and I have mixed white and cream before. I don't mind mixing my neutrals now and again, but I really, really like the sort of rustic look that cream-based pattern papers and products can give a specific type of layout like this. And I can't tell you guys enough how much that floral paper with that navy background and all those colors is bounced around. I adore that paper from the Lucky Charm collection, but I have yet to use it, and we're almost out of September, so we'll see if it gets put on a layout, or if it doesn't. I really don't know, but hopefully you guys can see it on something soon because it's really pretty. But once I finish matting all of my photos with a couple papers from the watering can collection and a couple from Lucky Charm, I really like how they turned out. Now, these are a lot of candid photos. I am a huge fan of candid photos, especially on family vacations and day trips. And luckily, back when we did family vacations and day trips, it was something I really enjoyed doing. So I have tons of photos like this that are just mundane, but also capture a lot in personality and subject matter. And it's just really cool to have those types of photos too, and not just the pose type. But in my How to Kill a Kit with Style for the month of September, I do have all of these Tim Holtz Botanical die cut and ephemera pieces. And to be honest, I struggle to use these if they're not in a kit. I rarely reach for them because they are so unique and not generally my style. But I saw them on clearance at Hobby Lobby one year, and I had to have them, and I still have buttloads of them in my stash. Here's where I end up picking out what types of florals I want to bring in here. Now, luckily, this is the Alex Bay area, so there's actually a ton of stuff to do. In the top 2 photos, actually all 3 photos, but the top 2 photos are of Bolt Castle grounds, so we were actually at Bolt Castle walking around it, and then the bottom one is the actual Uncle Sam boat tour, which is very common and popular in that area, and a really cool thing to do if you guys want to start traveling when the pandemic's over. Definitely recommend that kind of activity. It was super fun. We went when we were children. We also went when we were older, and the history is definitely more apparent when you're older, but it's definitely cool as a kid to go see a castle on an island. And I really love how this layout sort of captures that look without being too rustic, if that's the word I'm looking for. Maybe medieval is the word I'm looking for. But I think this vintage look really goes well with the theme of where we were, you know, a castle and nature and all of that jazz. But I start to layer this bottom cluster here, and you do notice I do have a rub-on that I put on earlier, which is from a Project Life set I've been trying to use up. And I just tuck in these Tim Holtz botanical pieces pretty much all around the photos. And I actually didn't stick with the same illustration type across the whole page because I have some that are simply like silhouetted and just outlined, and some that are in color. And I still think it looks really dainty and, you know, cute, but also has that nature aspect and that vintage aspect, which I think is perfect for, you know, we're at a castle, so I think it works really well. But here I am just tucking them into the top left, and there's also butterflies in this set, which I really enjoyed using, and getting a pop of orange from that monarch in the top left and the one in the bottom right. Even though there's not a ton of orange in the photos, there's a lot of red and pink, so I think it helps bring in the warm tones despite all the blues and greens with the background and the water and the sky, of course. So here I'm going to trim that edge just because there was a little bit of floral hanging off, and I want to make sure it slides into a page protector a-okay. And then I'm going to glue down my title, which ends up being this chipboard piece that just says "Let's Go." And you might also notice the middle banner of between the words that acts as the spacer is actually crossed arrows as well, so it really coordinates well with the stencil I used on the background. And now that we're sort of got every main piece in place, I can start doing extra embellishing and as I end stickerage. So I do have these Heidi Swap pieces I tried to incorporate because I've had this Heidi Swap set. I bought it a few months ago. It's travel themed, and I just want to start using some of my newer stuff up quicker so that I can bring in even more newer stuff. So I pulled in some of these despite them being outside of my kit, but I really liked these cream phrase stickers because they brought in a lot of the cream and the contrast that I wanted, because there's a little bit of black here and there throughout the layout, but not a ton, and these help bring in just a little bit more and add a couple words onto it as well. I do, of course, want to add one more rub-on because I only had 2 at this time, so I thought one more would be a good addition, and I can help put the location of where we are at. So I use these, which are very hard to read on camera, much easier in person, and essentially they are just really tiny Heidi Swap letter stickers. And I end up trying a label underneath it, which this is a white-based label. And I don't love the way it looks. I think it sticks out like a sore thumb, but if you liked it, you can totally mix white and cream. There's no problem with that. I just thought this layout was so gung-ho on all the cream aspects that I should continue with it. But luckily there is that wash of green in the background, so I can write the words Alex Bay behind it, and then pair it with that, of course, that rub-on of a geotag to just add a splash of gold up there as well and give it a little bit more of a pop and make sure the user notices. But hopefully you guys enjoyed some of these mixed media techniques. I know sometimes stenciling isn't considered mixed media because it's just ink through a stencil, but we also did a fun differentiation version of the packaging technique, which I really enjoyed, and hopefully you guys did too, because we all tend to have inks in our stash and some extra plastic packaging from all the scrappy goodies, so hopefully you can try it on your next layout. And remember that a little bit of water can go a long way, and you don't want to oversaturate your page too much without gessoing it first. So that's how I get away without having to use gesso on some of my pages, is by simply using less water. I'm going to finish it off with some wonderful enamel dots from W+9 and some enamel dots from Echo Park, some cream and brown, just to add a little bit of a finishing touch. But here is the completed layout. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and there you can see the background paper a little bit better. Just some fun waves to bring in those lake vibes and those river vibes for the Thousand Islands. But if you guys have been here, let me know if you guys love this place. I think it is so cool, and I've been there several times. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more, because there's always more minimal mixed media on the way for this series and tons more coming in the month of October. So I will see you guys again very, very soon. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys!